And you're calling for a general election?
Absolutely, because we believe that the Conservatives now have no mandate for government. The crisis people are facing, of one where we've seen a run on pension funds and soaring mortgage rates for homeowners, is a crisis that was made in Downing Street. And I don't believe that the British public will stand for Tory MPs in that place, in the corridors, imposing upon the public another Tory Prime Minister and denying the public any say in that whatsoever. I believe that people have had enough and that we need a general election now.
What do you say to those who say that if a different Conservative Prime Minister comes in and things steady themselves much more, indeed the Conservative Party acting swiftly, remarkably swiftly, the shortest premiership in the history of this country has just been ended? This is a parliament, this is a party, surely, that is responding to events.
This is a party that's in total meltdown. And the consequence of that meltdown is soaring mortgage rates. And in many ways the damage has been done because homeowners across the country are facing huge, quite eye-watering increases in their mortgage as a consequence of decisions taken by this Conservative government. So I don't really believe they have a mandate to continue. I don't think it's fair to the British public that they impose upon us a third Tory Prime Minister and deny the public any say whatsoever. I really do think that people have had enough. I hear it all the time. So I think it's time for a general election.
Why do you want to be in power right now? Look at the global situation we're facing. Interest rates rising in this country, yes, but also in the EU and in the US. Mortgage rates higher in the US. Gilt yields higher in the US. It's a torrid situation for any government to be surfing right now. Why do you want the job?
Well, indeed, what you're alluding to is the economic mess that a Labour government will inherit, and we'll have to clear up that Tory economic mess. But we need responsible government, one that isn't cavalier with the public finances like this Conservative government have been. This Conservative government have given us such a crisis that the gilt yields that you refer to, we saw a huge increase in gilt yields as a consequence of decisions in that budget. So we would have to clear up this mess, we would have to stabilise our economy and would have to start rebuilding our public services. But look, the British public, I sense there's a yearning for change amongst the British public. So I think Tory MPs, and I've just heard apparently that Mark Garnier, a Conservative MP, is also suggesting that a general election is needed. So Conservative MPs, some of them themselves are beginning to accept that we need a general election because the Conservatives, their mandate has run out.
Now, the Conservatives were elected in 2019 on an enormous mandate. It was the largest share of the vote for 40 years, a higher share of the vote than Tony Blair. What does it say that a number of Conservative MPs are now calling for the person who won that general election back in 2019 to return? Does that not rather shoot the fox to say that this is a mandate that has run out? If the guy who led the party that won by such a large degree in 2019 would return, surely that's a mandate that he won not so long ago.
That doesn't suggest to me a fox has been shot. That suggests to me it's a complete shambles over there. And Tory MPs are desperately flailing around trying to work out what to do next. And I just think this is a crisis. This isn't a game. People are facing their mortgage costs literally going through the roof. People are wondering how they're going to afford the weekly shop. I've got parents talking to me wondering how they're going to afford this Christmas, which is coming up. I think it's time that the country was given an opportunity to have its say. And I think the country will say we want stability, we want a new approach, we want a fresh approach. So I think the country will say it's time for Labour. But in the end, it's up to the country to make that decision.
And just finally, looking at that mini-budget that you referred to there, Labour did support by value the majority of measures in that mini-budget. Is it still the Labour Party's policy that you support a cut to the basic rate of income tax and the 2-year unit price freeze for energy bills?
So we said that we wouldn't oppose that cut in the basic rate of income tax. We were long campaigning for the national insurance increase not to go ahead because the Conservatives fought a general election saying that they wouldn't increase national insurance. But our concern about that budget wasn't just the scale of the unfunded tax cuts. It was also that it was a budget in a context of trashing the independent institutions, and there were question marks as to whether Britain could pay her debts because we didn't have an OBR forecast. That in turn led to the gilt yields increasing, which in turn led to a run on pension funds and soaring borrowing rates, which in turn, because of gilt yields and swap rates on the markets, led to mortgages going up.
But you still back the policies that were within that budget?
No, we will set out our policies on tax and spend at the next general election. But we're still waiting for a forecast, of course. You know, we're still, in theory, going to get some fiscal statement on the 31st of October. I don't know, by the way, how a new Prime Minister comes in and he's just bounced into a fiscal statement 2 days later, but maybe that's a question for tomorrow's media rounds. But we're still waiting for a forecast of what the true state of the public finances is. We don't actually know the scale of the black.
So no